Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Nupur Gupta, practicing gynecology in Gurgaon from Well Women Clinic, and I also work as director in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Fortis Memorial Research Institute, Gurugram. Did you know that we are celebrating Cervical Cancer Awareness Month this January? And to know more about your cervical health, we are here to discuss with you what you need to know. As cervical cancer is a public health priority for women worldwide. We all know it is one of the world's deadliest but most easily preventable cancers that we see in women. To know more about this, we also have with us Dr. Shubham Garg. Welcome, Dr. Shubham.
Thank you, madam. Good afternoon. How are you, ma'am?
Yes, everything good. So let me introduce you to Dr. Shubham. Dr. Shubham is a medical graduate from Maulana Azad Medical College, followed which he did his general surgery from Lady Hardinge Medical College in New Delhi. And after that, he also worked at All India Institute of Medical Sciences as a senior registrar in the Department of Surgical Oncology, following which he pursued his master's degree, that is MCH, at Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai, which is one of the stalwarts in oncology, and he did his surgical oncology from there, followed by various fellowships which he did in Seoul as well as Shanghai. So welcome, Dr. Shubham. Let us take this discussion forward. So we are here to discuss about cervical cancers, and so when it comes to cervical cancers, Dr. Shubham's department looks after managing and treating once the diagnosis of cervical cancer has been made. But before that, let us discuss what is this cervical cancer, where it arises from, what are the risk factors, how do you know that you might develop cervical cancer. Then we will also discuss, is it preventable? How can we screen early? How can we know it early? What are precancers? And what to do if a cervical cancer diagnosis has been made. So we will be sharing a short presentation with everyone to make it easier and to make it understandable that what are we trying to communicate to everyone. So let us together work on uh, screening as many women as possible and also beat cervical cancer with WHO's goal of eliminating globally the cervical cancer till 2030. So I think we should be all in this together. So
So,
doctor,
ma'am, let me ask you
would you
actually
like to
what
talk?
is cervical
Yeah,
cancer?
yeah. So cervical cancer, as you all can see in the picture, this is the uterus and this is the lower part of uterus, which we call it as cervix. And anatomically, these are the tubes, this is the ovary and this is the vagina. So the lower part of the uterus, which we call as cervix or the neck of the womb, is the place where cervical cancer arises. And if you see the section here, this is the cervix which appears normal, and this is the cervix where changes are seen, sometimes not with naked eye and sometimes grossly also. When it is advanced, we are able to see the lower part of cervix when we do the clinical examination.
So, ma'am, if we were to put it in layman's language, what would you call this area cervix to be actually?
Yeah. So cervix is actually the mouth of the uterus that communicates into the vagina. But very important for Indian women to understand it, that it is the most common gynae cancer that we see in Indian women. If we talk about overall incidence of cancers in women, तो ये fourth most common gynae cancer है that we see.
So, if now that we are talking about cervical cancer, madam, what would you want to tell about the prevalence of cervical cancer?
Yeah. So, Dr. Shubham, as we discussed, we know that cervical cancer is one of the most dreaded, but at the same time, preventable cancer. That is why the concern is so high. So, if we talk about Indian statistics, every 2 minutes, one woman dies, and every 8 minutes, a new cancer is diagnosed. Worldwide statistics, every minute, one woman is diagnosed with cervical cancer. If we look at WHO statistics, almost 5,70,000 new cases were diagnosed in 2018, and every year there are 3,11,000 deaths. In India, it accounts for 67,000 deaths, which are preventable. So we need to focus on how we can work on its prevention.
So
So we
with
know
this,
that, yeah,
we would come to the next question, which I think would come to everybody mind, that what are the risk factors which are actually associated with cervical cancer now that we know how much is the prevalence of cervical cancer?
yeah. So we know that 90% of cervical cancers are preventable, more than 90%, and women who have been diagnosed with cervical cancer, almost 90% never did any screening. And that is why they were detected at the end stage when cancer had already developed. Coming to risk factors, the most common risk factor is infection with the virus, which is called HPV, that is human papilloma virus, and also is more common in women who have multiple sexual partners. For women who smoke, smoking increases the risk much more. For women who have multiple sexual infections, the immunity is poor, the diet is not healthy, you are overweight, or you have been using oral contraceptive pills for a very long time without no stop in between, even when you get married at an earlier age and pregnancy happens when you are a teenager, low socioeconomic strata, and in some women, even family history of cervical cancer is important.
So, ma'am, I would just want to add to this that if you see, a lot of things are multifactorial in this. Having presence of smoking, having multiple pregnancies, having immunocompromised states,
Yeah.
not maintaining a good hygiene, all these contributes together and can predispose ourselves to this thing. With this, we come to the next question: that is there a particular cause of cervical cancer? Can we pinpoint a reason why cervical cancer happens?
Yes. So we know that 99% of cases of cervical cancer develop due to infection with this virus, which is called HPV, that is human papilloma virus. And that is why we can also test for the HPV DNA. We also have vaccine against this HPV virus. And before going into HPV virus, we also need to understand that what are the signs and symptoms which should not be ignored in women. Coming to those, number one is that you have an abnormal vaginal discharge. That is foul swelling, that is persistent, that doesn't respond to treatment. You have abnormal bleeding, which can be after intercourse, after menopause, it should never be ignored. Intermenstrual bleeding or heavy flow, even sometimes urinary problems which appear late when the cancer is advancing more, difficulty in passing urine, bladder control is lost, even pelvic pain, lower abdomen pain, or pain during intercourse, and other than that, not able to eat and losing weight, which are like any other cancer. So, yes,
So the
Dr. Shubham, yes.
Yeah, ma'am, I just wanted to add that the lower signs, the ones that were mentioned below, are the ones that are seen in advanced stages. The pelvic pain,
Advanced
inability,
cases. Yeah.
yes, advanced stages. Whereas the earlier stages are the ones which will present with abnormal bleeding or some amount of
Mm.
vaginal discharge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first thing we are discussing today is prevention. And prevention is a very important tool as regards cancer is concerned. If we do the right test at the right time, it is preventable. And for prevention, there are three modalities. Number one is primary prevention, where we give the vaccination so that before you are exposed to the virus, you already have immunity. Second is secondary prevention, where we are screening, that is doing your pap smear and also treating the precancer lesions, because it takes a very long time for cancer to actually develop. In cervical cancer, we have a very long time before we can diagnose. and tertiary prevention, which includes the diagnosis and treatment of invasive cancers once they are diagnosed. So HPV vaccination is vaccination against this virus. Best time to give is in adolescent age groups before onset of your sexual activity. And in mostly developed countries, up to 26 years, it is administered. In our country, the Federation of Obs Gynae Society recommends even up to 45 years because the prevalence is very high. But you need to keep in mind that taking vaccination is not 100%. The screening should still continue. So WHO also recommends the same to administer vaccine at a young age in when you are a teenager and up to 14 years. Only 2 doses are mandatory and that will do enough work. Why are we so concerned about HPV is because not only cervical cancer, it is also a precursor to so many other cancers like anal cancers, oropharynx, penile cancers. In some developed countries, even the boys or the males are given this vaccine. In India, still we do not have approval to give it to the male population. So these are the two vaccines that are available. You can ask your gynecologist if you are a teenager or if you are a child, your pediatrician can do this for you. And for your daughters, mothers can go and check it out.
So if I may just add
Yeah.
that there are different strains of HPV virus. So there are actually more than 100 strains of HPV virus, but the two most common strains that we come across which are associated with cervical cancer are HPV 16 and 18. So the Cervarix vaccine that is available covers both of these strains, whereas the Gardasil vaccine is a quadrivalent. It covers four strains, that is 16, 18, 31 and 33. There is now a newer Gardasil, which is a nine strain vaccine, which covers even nine strains. So as we are progressing technologically, we are getting better and better vaccines, which just underlines the fact that we should consider to get ourselves vaccinated at the right age. But just like Madam said, that vaccination does not give 100% protection, and still it is mandatory to undergo screening. So comes the next question, that why should we screen and who should we screen? So, Madam, how would we answer that question?
Yes. हाँ. So as screening plays a very important role. और screen का क्या मतलब है? Screening का मतलब ये that we are able to detect changes in the before actually it turns into cancer. We are able to find out when you have no symptom. So don't wait for abnormal symptoms to appear, but get yourself screened. And it has been seen that women have a very long time for the cancer to develop if your immunity is good enough. So coming to next question, that what are the modalities for screening for cervical cancer? हम स्क्रीन इसलिए करना चाहते हैं बिकॉज वी वांट टू लुक फॉर abnormal cells in the cervix, for which the test that you do is also which is part of routine health checkups when you go for your preventive gynae checkups. It is called pap smear or a cervical smear. Conventionally we used to do it by taking swab from the cervix that we saw earlier and it was sent to the lab on slide form. But now the same cells are sent in a liquid preparation, so its efficacy is better and we are able to, its sensitivity and specificity is also much higher. But if we combine this liquid based cytology with HPV DNA, which is the main cause of cervical cancer in more than 99%, our sensitivity goes much higher. Coming to what is the right age to screen. So if you are sexually active, if you are above 21 years of age, you should go and ask for a pap smear for yourself. And if you do a routine liquid based cytology every 3 years is good enough if the report is normal. If you combine with HPV and both the reports are negative, then you can do it every 5 years. After 65 years, it is not required if you don't have any symptom and if your earlier reports were normal. Nowadays, there are also kits that we are able to do HPV sampling on our own. So self-sampling devices are also available to do the testing where it is less cumbersome, and the fear of going to gynecologist also reduces. So now, once we do the pap smear, usually in 90% of cases, the report will be normal. But sometimes abnormal cells can be seen. So when we see abnormal cells on a pap test, abnormal cell can be anything. It can be an atypical cell, it can be squamous metaplasia, it can be dysplasia. But what to do if abnormal cells appear on cervical cytology is the next step that we do is that you are referred by your general physician to a, or the person whosoever has done your pap test, whether it was done in the lab, will be referred to the gynecologist to go for a colposcopy. So colposcopy is microscopic view where through the colposcope we visualize the cervix and we look for any abnormal cells, where we apply some dyes, we apply acetic acid, we apply iodine to look for any abnormal cell. If we find any abnormal cell, then we do a biopsy. So you might need a biopsy if colposcopy finding is abnormal, and this biopsy is again sent to the laboratory. If cervical biopsy is normal, you don't need to worry. You will be called for follow-up as per protocol. But if cervical biopsy shows abnormal cells or precancerous cells, then further treatment will be advisable and you don't need surgery at this time. So the findings can be CIN1, which is cervical intraepithelial neoplasia. This is a low grade finding. There can be higher grades also, CIN2 and 3. Usually when you get infected with HPV virus and there are CIN1 changes, this will regress within 3 to 6 months. So your doctor will call you back for follow-up after within 3 to 6 months to repeat the test. If it is CIN2 and 3, then usually we don't ignore and we go for further treatment, which can be conization. That means a biopsy or a cone-like biopsy is removed from lower part of the uterus, that is the cervix. A big chunk is removed and sent for testing. We can also excise this part, which is called LEAP, where the transformation zone is removed. And third thing, the simplest procedure, which is the OPD procedure that can be done in OPD without admission, painless, is cryotherapy. So cryo means ice, and this is how the patient looks like, and the cervix, ice is placed on the cervix, and usually with ice, the cells are burnt for 3 minutes, and then we thaw and we again freeze, and usually these cells will be removed and new cells will come up. Now comes the report at your biopsy, the cervical biopsy report, which shows something is abnormal. That means there is suspicion of cancer, or there is a clear-cut report that yes, the cells have developed into cervical cancer, or maybe there was a growth which was sent for biopsy. So now, Dr. Shubham, once the diagnosis has been established and we know that this is cervical cancer, what will be the next step? That how will you counsel and how will you go about it?
Thank you, madam. So once we have assured that this is a cancer and the diagnosis has been made, the next step is to go for staging. So like rightly you have written that it is important to understand that there are different types of cancer and they have different staging. So you cannot compare a breast cancer or a head neck cancer to a cervical cancer. Having said that, cervical cancer is one of the easier cancers to stage, because mostly the staging is done at local examination only, where you can understand just by examination on table what is the likely stage going to be. It is also important to understand that cervical cancer can be of two types, the squamous cell carcinoma and the adenocarcinoma, whereas the squamous cell carcinoma is the most commonly that we see in our usual practice. The age and parity have a important influence on our treatment, because it is important to offer personalized treatment to the patient rather than giving them a textbook treatment, because we have to treat the patient in toto and not just the disease. So if we go to the next slide, we can understand what are the different stages of cervical cancer. Uh, the the first stage is one when the disease is restricted to the cervix only. So it has been subdivided into 1A and 1A, 1A1 and 1A2. Now this disease is actually which is not even visible to the naked eye, and you will see it only during colposcopy and microscopic examination. These stages are the ones which are easiest to treat, and this is what uh, we as oncologists and well-versed gynecologists like madam try to aim to identify so that we can offer the best survival chance to the patient. Patients with early stage cancers like 1A1, 1A2 might not even require a surgery and can be completely cured with procedures just like cryotherapy and a complete cone excision. However, if the stage increases in size, the tumor increases in size and it becomes something like a 1B1, where the tumor is clinically visible to the naked eye, but less than 4 centimeters, then we don't have any option but to offer surgery to the patient. Once the tumor size is larger than 4 centimeters, that is, it becomes 1B2, then probably surgery might not be even possible, and there are alternate options which we'll discuss subsequently. Uh, uh, in stages higher than 1B2, that is 2A, 2B, and 3A, we find that the tumor has actually gone beyond the cervix. In 2A, it involves the upper one-third of vagina, whereas in 2B, it includes the parametrium but has not reached up to the lateral pelvic side. So any disease which is 2B and beyond is considered not operable, and we consider alternate forms of treatment like chemotherapy and radiotherapy for this. I don't want to go into very specific details, and we will probably discuss this next month in a subsequent lecture. We'll talk about all the aspects of treatment, but I just wanted to take you through the possible stages which are there. Now, these stages are mostly done on a pervaginal examination, which is done at your clinical visit with your oncologist or gynecologist. But if you will see in this chart that as our stages increase in size, the chances of survival reduce. So if you see, if you diagnose the patient in stage 0, which is the pre-invasive stage, which are the SIN 1, SIN 2, SIN 3, that's 5-year survival is as high as 100%. That it means that of all those people who were diagnosed with SIN 1, 2, 3, they would continue to live for 5 years. If we move to the stage 1, where it involves the cervix, but it's still microscopic, that is stage 1, the survival rate becomes 85%. However, if you see, if the disease becomes goes to the pelvic side walls or the lower one-third of vagina, the survival rate reduces to as low as 35%, which means that 10 patients who are diagnosed with CS cervix, if have a stage 3 disease, only 3 of those patients will go on to live up to 5 years. They will not even make it, 70% of the patients will not even make up to 5 years. And if the disease is spread widely, to other organs like the bladder or the rectum, then the chances of survival become as low as 7%, which means that of 10 patients, not even one patient will make it to 5 years. That is why we stress upon the importance of early detection. If you detect your cancer early, your treatment will be easier, it will be cheaper, and probably you will have a good survival rates as compared to a later treatment decision.
Yeah, so Dr. Shubham, in your clinical practice, which stages do you see more often?
Unfortunately, in our clinical practice, it is usually stage 2B and beyond that comes to us because, like you rightly mentioned, there is not much awareness about screening, madam. That is why the smaller diseases, the 1A, 1B, are the ones which we do not see very often. However, once the patients develop some bleeding or they develop pain, they present to their gynecologist, and at that time the stage is already gone beyond 2B, where we will not be able to offer a complete surgical treatment to those patients.
Yes. So it is very important that we are able to diagnose at an early stage so that surgical oncologist can also give the best results, and your prognosis, 5-year survival, everything changes. So coming to surgery, uh, so
So
uh,
yeah,
so when you plan a surgery, so what kind of hysterectomy will you offer if the stage is early and if she is operable? So which hysterectomy will be best as far as early cervical malignancy is
so
concerned?
any the basic principles of surgical oncology is that whenever you remove any cancerous portion, you remove it with a normal, healthy nearby tissue around it. That is why we would go for the option on the right, madam, that is radical hysterectomy, where we'll remove the uterus along with the fallopian tubes and the nearby tissue, which is the parametria, and we ensure that we take a vaginal curve margin of at least a centimeter from the nearest visible disease. This is very important because it has been found that patients who do not have this healthy margin, the chances of local recurrence, that is the disease coming back, are higher in these patients. Not only a good hysterectomy, but we also have to ensure that we take a lot of lymph nodes, which are the pelvic lymph nodes, out along with the uterus and the cervix. It has been found out that as the stage increases, the chances of the disease disseminating to the lymph node increases, and your prognosis in later stages depends on lymph node involvement rather than the stage of the disease. That is why it is important that you do not just do a good hysterectomy, but you should also ensure that you take out any pelvic lymph nodes which are visible or appear to be enlarged during surgery.
Yes. So very rightly put, a complete surgery will also include lymph node sampling because we need to see how far the cancer has spread, and your post-operative treatment will also depend on that how much more treatment is required following surgery. So, so if we, so by now, you should know that cervical cancer is detectable early, it is preventable, it is treatable. So you should not ignore this. And if you take care of yourself, you can take care of your family all the more better. What else can you do is to have safe sex, to is not to have multiple sex partners, not to smoke because it increases your risk double. And if we are all together in this, we can prevent more than 30,000 cancers each year. And you don't need to cure cervical cancer if you can prevent it. So keep this in mind, and you can also share your story and inspire others by joining the Facebook group by name of Sambhav Hai. And if you search for it, you can join it and share your inspiring success stories with others so that women are able to discuss their problems, visit the doctor, and get themselves screened and diagnosed earlier when required. So, this is what we needed. We were here to discuss with you all. For any questions, I will just check. So, Dr. Shubham, during these days, have you also seen that malignancy stage has advanced because women and people did not come on time earlier?
Oh, definitely, madam. Because of the lockdown and the COVID pandemic, there was, a reluctance to come to the hospital to seek treatment, and this has led to stage progression in a lot of patients, which is not healthy at all. We have seen that the treatment actually got disturbed for a lot of patients which were going on treatment, and they could not come for treatment. So, COVID has actually set back cancer treatment a lot.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Shubham, for sparing your valuable time and discussing about
Ma'am, there are
and making
some
also women more aware about this. Uh, uh,
there are some questions that I have which actually came on my Facebook. So let me discuss that. Uh,
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Dr. Mrs. Anu Prankul has asked us for the precautions that we should take to prevent cervical cancers. I think Madam has very well described all the precautions that we took. The couple of slides back, we actually saw that maintaining a good hygiene, avoiding smoking, having less sexual partners, keeping a good immunity are some of the things which we can do. These are some of the modifiable factors. Obviously, some things that we cannot modify, like our age or family history, are not in our control. But this is something that we should do. There is another question by Prakriti Gupta from Gwalior, that what would be the first initial sign of cervical cancer?
Yeah. So you need to keep a watch that your cycles are regular, the flow is not heavy, there is no bleeding in between periods, there is no bleeding after intercourse, and if there is anything abnormal. So when we talk about normal menstrual cycle, it is a cycle that happens every month cyclically. The day might not be the same every time, but if it happens between 21 to 35 days, is considered to be normal, and flow should happen only during those days. If flow happens before or in between, or it is much heavier than normal, then you need to visit and discuss this problem with your gynae.
Great, madam. So there's another question by Mrs. Khatoon, that what is the cervical cancer screening method? We just showed in the slides actually that there are two methods, of which one is a pap smear, where you take a sample of the cervix, especially the transformation zone, and you examine those samples in under a microscope and to look for any abnormal cells. There is another method where you actually there's a modification of pap smear, which is a liquid based pap smear, in which you don't make a slide. The other one is HPV DNA testing, where you use the same sample to ascertain whether there is HPV infectivity of the cervical region or not, because 99% of cervical cancers have been found to be associated with HPV vaccine, and those patients who have abnormal pap smear along with a high risk HPV DNA are at a greater risk of developing a higher grade invasive cancer than those patients who do not. Ma'am, there's another question on the pap smear, that what should be the frequency of pap smear test at different ages?
Yes. So we know that pap smear should only be taken once you are sexually active, and we would advocate this at the age of 21 years, and from 21 years up to the age of 65 years. Every 3 years, if you do only a liquid based cytology and it is normal, then we can stop doing after 65 years. If we combine it with HPV DNA, which is much more sensitive, then we can do it every 5 years. So it depends on what is the report. If there is anything abnormal, the protocol will not be same for all women.
Right. There's another question by Dr. R.K. Jain from Gwalior, that which test must be done priority wise, HPV 16-18 testing or a pap smear? So it's a very valid question, Dr. Jain, and I must say that this is what is perplexing a lot of epidemiologists and preventive specialists, that HPV 16-18 is actually a more sophisticated test, and it's a laboratory based test, which is the ideal. But a pap smear is a more of a easily available and can be easily replicable, because you don't need a lot of scientific technology. You need a good cytopathologist to evaluate a pap smear. However, it has been found that when both the tests are done in conjugation with each other, you just can't look at pap smear in isolation and HPV 16-18. If you do both the tests in conjugation with each other, the false negativity rate of both the tests cancel each other, and you get a more accurate result. Having said that, it has been advised that if you are getting a HPV 16-18 testing done, then you can increase your interval of getting a repeat testing from 3 to 5 years, which just shows that probably HPV testing is more reliable as compared to a pap smear. But for the sake of safety and simplicity, we as oncologists, and I'm sure Dr. Nupur as gynecologist, would advise a pap smear along with a HPV 16-18 together at the same time, madam.
Yes. So it is not necessary to go for HPV testing if it is not available. Even at peripheries where pap smear facility is not available, only a clinical examination or a per speculum examination with application of acetic acid or Lugol's iodine can also help to screen women who actually need pap smear or who need cervical biopsy. So, even if pap smear facility is not there, only a speculum can do wonders and refer those women to higher centers for further screening.
So what Madam mentioned about using acetic acid, so there is actually a study done at Tata Memorial where they use visualization under acetic acid to look for abnormal areas at the cervix to identify the higher risk patients in the rural setup, and then referring these patients to higher center for those who had an abnormal VIA test, so that they could easily identify patients without having a lot of higher technology tests. There are a couple of questions again by Mr. Pradeep from Gwalior and Mrs. Varsha Gautam from Agra, asking about the vaccine prophylaxis
Mhm.
and whether vaccine
Mhm. Mhm.
can prevent the risk of malignancy. So, like Madam mentioned, and I also elaborated that there
Mhm.
is nothing which is
Mhm.
100% foolproof. You can only and only increase your risk of being safe from acquiring cervical cancer. It has been found that cervical cancer is something which is preventable, as and it is the chances of it being preventable is as good as that the WHO has given a target of making it actually completely disappear by 2030. So this high is the prevention rate by giving vaccine, that we are aiming to eliminate cervical cancer by the use of vaccine. And that is why we subscribe to the fact that we should vaccinate females between the age of 9 to 26, especially those who have not had sexual contact. And the dosage remains two dose at 6 monthly interval for age up to 14 years. And if beyond 14 or 15 years, then your dosage becomes 3 in schedule at 0, 1, and 6. I must say that what Madam mentioned, that HPV vaccines prevent us from other cancers, which included the oral cancer,
Yeah.
the penile cancer, and that is why it has been subscribed that even males should less than the age of 15 should get the cervical cancer vaccine. Ma'am, what is the percentage of patients who come to you in your OPD asking for cancer vaccination for cervical? Do you get a lot of patients with this?
No, we get a lot of queries regarding whether we should take the vaccine or not. But still, the people, still women and families are still afraid of taking the vaccine. But I think now enough research has been done, and we should not question science too much, because screening will still go on, and whatever is available should be used to the best, because scientists are working hard to give solutions to diseases, and as citizens we should opt for these methods. Simple injection site pain or maybe swelling or mild fever can happen like any other vaccination can do to you, but otherwise there is no harm, and you should take the vaccine at least for your girls, and especially those girls who have grown up now, have neither received vaccine nor they have any knowledge about cervical screen. But that is very important, but that is why most of the hospitals are also now including pap smear as part of women health checks. But we still need to be more aware and spread it further. So all those who are listening to us today, you should go and get your pap smear, take call your doctor, book your appointment, and also convey this to five more of your friends or colleagues or sisters, so that only if all of us are together, we will be able to spread awareness more and prevent this cancer. So thank you so much, Dr. Shubham, and thank you everyone for watching us. You can still drop your questions. We will take it in our next live session. We will come next month discussing that the cervical cancer diagnosis has been made. So what should be the further treatment? what is the prognosis, what is the survival rate, who is the best person to do the surgery, what will be the mode of surgery, whether it is laparoscopic, whether it is open surgery, it is robotic surgery. So many modalities have come up, and so we will discuss in our live session. We will share the date soon, and hope that more of you join us in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for having me. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, ma'am. Good day to you.